Hi everyone, welcome to another Procreate tutorial. This is the drawing that we will be completing in today's video, this apple pie drawing. It's a pretty long one, so buckle up, but it's lots of fun. The hardest part is probably just getting the lattice work right on the top of it, but once that's done, everything else is super straightforward and super simple and lots of fun to add all of our texture and highlights and shadows. So if you are new here, I mainly post Procreate tutorials, so if that's something you're interested in, go ahead and subscribe. I also offer extra tutorials over on Patreon, so that is linked in the description below. If you join us there, you get access to exclusive tutorials every month, along with sneak peeks of what we'll be drawing over here on YouTube and some other fun things here and there. So here are some of the drawings that we've been doing recently. Okay, and then before we get started on today's video, the only thing that you will need to do is download the color palette. I have it linked in the description below. It's totally free to download. Just save the file to your iPad and then double tap it or click on it and click open in Procreate so that you can use the same colors as you follow along with the drawing today. I will also post the canvas dimensions, color profile, and layers needed on the screen and in the description below so that you can use those to set up your canvas. So take a minute to get everything ready and then come back and we'll get started. Okay, this is the color palette that we'll be working with today. So let's just go ahead and get started. We'll set our background color. We'll make our plate, then we'll make our pie, and then we'll like shadow and texture everything, and then we'll add our apples and leaves and like some shadows and finishing details at the end. So this is going to be a fun one. Let's go ahead and get started. On our layer menu, let's just click on this background color layer and set it to the first color on the first row of the color palette, this nice creamy color. Then we'll go back to our layer menu and be on layer 1 and we'll start with our plate. So we'll grab our first green color, second one on the top row, and our monoline brush under the calligraphy tab. Okay. We're going to start with like a perfectly horizontal oval. So we'll just draw a nice oval shape, hold it down until it turns perfectly smooth. And then when you touch your finger on the screen, you should set it to like this horizontal angle or any of these. It kind of snaps to these angles. We want to set it to a good horizontal angle. Kind of any size or shape you get is fine. A good size like this would be good. And then don't click this ellipse button at the top to adjust it because you might mess up the horizontal angle of it, but we'll just drag and drop to fill it in. And then we can grab it with our arrow tool and then we can resize it if we need to. So on uniform or freeform or anything like that. Uniform if you want to resize the whole thing. Freeform if you want to make it taller or wider or skinnier, whatever you need to do. We want it pretty good and skinny from top to bottom like so. And then most importantly, let's turn snapping on in the bottom left. And we'll snap it to the center of the screen where we see this vertical yellow line. So, and then we're a little ways from the bottom still. So somewhere about here, I have a little bit of room on the left and right side if that's helpful for your sizing. We'll end up moving it like to the left a little bit later, but we want to keep it centered for now so we can kind of center everything together before we move the whole thing to the left. So this looks good. Let's just continue with our plate. So on our layer menu, we'll make a duplicate of this layer. So slide to the left and hit duplicate. Grab the bottom one. We'll grab the third color on the top row. And we'll drag and drop to fill it in. You won't see the color change on your canvas because it's below this other one, but if we grab it with our arrow tool and move it straight down on that vertical yellow line, you should see a lighter oval stick out there. But this is making like the rim, the front rim of our plate. So just drag that down just a little bit, keeping it on that center yellow line. And then once you have a good little rim on the edge there, we'll use our monoline brush, which I have set to 30%. And the same lighter green color, and I'm just going to zoom in on the left side, connect these with like a quick line. You can hold it down if you want to, or just make a nice kind of quick line to just try to seamlessly connect them. Do the same thing on the other side. Seamlessly connect them. Beautiful. Okay, layer menu again, back to our top layer. Slide to the left and hit duplicate and be on the top one this time. We're going to make the inner part of the plate. Grab our darker color now, fifth one on the top row, and drag and drop to fill it in. Arrow tool on freeform. We're going to downsize this a bit and then recenter it. So you'll see like the center yellow line and then you'll see like some blue lines also pop up that try to center it with this other oval. That's kind of what we're going for. And we want to drag it down a good ways. And that's why we're on freeform too, is so that we can get our angles right. So we just kind of want like the top and bottom edges around this oval to be the same, and then the left and right side can be a little bit wider than the top and bottom ones, but not a ton wider. So that's why we're on freeform instead of uniform. But again, just make sure to recenter it every time that you change it, and then it should look something like this. Okay, and then once we have that one done, we're going to make a duplicate of that oval on our layer menu. Slide to left and hit duplicate, drag it to the bottom of all of our layers so far, and then grab it with our arrow tool and move it straight down. And then this is going to be like the little bottom tiny piece of our plate sticking out there. So I'm just going to drag it out till we just see the teeniest little bit of it down there. And then that completes our plate. So until we do all of our texturing and stuff, this is what we have so far. So now we can move on to our pie already. Let's just keep on going. So on our layer menu, we are going to actually make a duplicate of our top layer again, so we can use all the same ovals. So instead of drawing them all, we like to duplicate them so that they're all kind of similar angles. You know, we don't want any of them to end up too round or anything, so that's why we're doing all the duplicating. So another duplicate of the top layer. This time we're going to fill it in with our pie color, our first pie color, first one on the second row, and drag and drop to fill that in. Arrow tool, again on freeform, we're going to downsize it just a little bit and recenter it. So we just want to see the teeniest little bit of that like darker plate color around it. So something like that is good. Okay, and now we're going to go to our layer menu, and we're going to end up making the edge of our pie crust on the top. So we're actually going to go back and find our main plate layer. So it's the third one down on my layer menu. So I have my pie bottom layer, my middle plate layer, and then this is like the main plate layer. Slide to left on that one and hit duplicate and drag it to the top. And let's go ahead and recolor it with maybe our darker pie color, second one on the second row. So fill that in. It won't stay this color. This is just going to be kind of a guide for us. Let's grab it with our arrow tool on freeform. We can downsize it a little bit, but not much. And then let's drag it up and keep it centered on our center yellow line. And we just want to drag it up a little ways above the plate. Maybe the bottom of the oval is like touching the top of the plate there. So something like that. They're kind of almost touching there. Maybe that's a good distance to shoot for the start of our pie crust. Okay, so that's just going to be a guide for us. So on our layer menu, let's just add a new layer right above this one, and we'll draw the edge of and we'll start the edge of our pie crust. So again, we're just using this previous layer as like a guide. So now we're going to grab our original pie color again, first one on the second row, and our monoline brush at 30%. And essentially what I'm going to do here is create a wavy line going around this. So kind of following this shape. So I'll just pick a point and then I'll go up, down, up, down, up, down. When I get to the edge, we kind of go out at like a more of a curve like this. And then up, down, up, down, up, down. Kind of trying to keep it like pretty consistent the whole way in terms of like the size of our little bumps. But I just kind of touch the edge of the oval and then go up and then kind of back down. So then we get a good shape connected all the way around. And it's kind of messy right now, but that's okay. It can be kind of rough, and you know, even I have some little like sticky outy parts. We'll clean those all up, but it can be a little bit rough to start. We'll smooth it all out, and it can look fairly natural, so it's okay if it's not perfect. So then on our layer menu, we're just going to slide to the left on this layer and hit duplicate again. Arrow tool, we're going to drag it straight up. So just straight up to where it like kind of lines up with our other one. It might not be on the center yellow line because we didn't center that last layer, but just there should be a blue line that connects them or a yellow line, and you know, you should be able to just kind of eyeball that they look fairly lined up. If they're not perfect, that's okay. So we just created a little bit of distance there. That's like the thickness of our pie crust. So then same layer, same brush. I'm just going to go to the edge here where they're separated and bring these two edges together in like a rounded curve. Same thing on the other side. Okay, now we need to fill all this in, but they're on two separate layers right now, so we'll snap those together on our layer menu so they're both on one layer. And then we'll fill in between the curvy lines on the top and the bottom, and these little pieces on the sides. We can just kind of fill in with our brush or whatever works. Fill that all in. And now we can kind of smooth it out. So now we can just smooth out anywhere that needs to be. You know, adjust your curves a little bit if you need to. But again, they can be pretty wavy and messy. If you need to use your eraser at all, also feel free to do that. If anything needs to be like erased. I would just set my eraser also to the monoline brush at 30% so that you can kind of use that. So if there's a place where you need to erase instead to kind of curve things out better, go ahead and do so. But yeah, I'm just making sure all my little bumps are kind of similar and nice and bumpy and not too sharp or anything. Just a good kind of wave. My corners here, I'm just kind of fixing those. And don't worry at all about the layer underneath. That was just our guide so that we could get a good curve, or so that we could get a good shape on this wavy line. So now we have something like this. And that is the start of our pie crust. I'm going to say it's like a little too wide still, so I'm going to grab it with my arrow tool on just like uniform, and I'm going to downsize the whole thing a little bit and then recenter it. So on the center yellow line, but essentially we're going to connect the bottom pie piece here up to our pie crust here with like a slightly angled line, and I just felt like it was a little too big before, so I'm going to set it about there, like so. Now on our layer menu, we can get rid of this old little guide shape that we had. So we can just delete that layer, and this is what we're left with for our pie crust. Very simple, very kind of weird and wavy. That's exactly what we were going for. So now on our layer menu, let's make the apple filling part, and then we'll make our basket weave on top of that. So our apple filling part is going to go above our pie crust edge that we just made, and then you'll see how we fix it up. So we want to be above it so that we can cover up this back piece, but then obviously we don't want to cover up any of this front piece. So I'll show you how we'll do that. So on our layer menu, new layer at the very top, grab the first of our apple filling color, which is the 6th one on the second row, and we still are on our monoline brush. I'm going to start on one side, kind of right in the corner here, go up and curve to the other side, hold that down until we get a nice smooth curve. Click the arc button at the top to adjust it, and we just want a good kind of curve up like so. And then we just want it to kind of come into the corners here. It's okay if it overlaps a little bit, but just kind of right into the corner there, right into the corner here. And then a good curve covering up most of the back of our pie crust. But if we see some of it still on each side, that's okay. But that looks good. Now with my pen tool, I'm going to connect it below here. So I'm just going to kind of draw a line right through this pie crust here to the other side to make a shape so we can fill it in. Okay, now on our layer menu, we'll go back to our pie crust layer, click on that layer and click select. Make sure color fill is not turned on and nothing filled in. So you should just see diagonal lines everywhere except for where your pie crust is. So now on our layer menu, we'll just switch back to our filling colored layer and grab our eraser tool. You should still see the diagonal lines. And we just want to erase everything on this bottom edge. So as you can see, you can erase up here where the top edge of our pie crust is, but we don't want that. We want our filling to cover that. So just essentially right to the corner here, we just want to kind of connect it there. So I'll clean it up right there and then erase everything in this bottom area. So increase the size of your eraser if you would like to. And then if we click our selection tool to turn that off, this is what we're left with. So this is our filling, but we still see our front pie crust piece. So that looks great. Okay, and now our basket weave is going to go on top of that. So we're going to make one side, then we'll duplicate it and flip it for the other. So this will be not too hard. It looks hard and it does get kind of tedious when we start doing like where they overlap, but I promise you it's not that bad. So on our layer menu, let's add a new layer above our pie filling. We are going to use a couple different colors to help us with this since they're the same color. They'll end up being the same color as the pie crust. But let's start with the second color on the second row so that we can see it better. Same monoline brush under the calligraphy tab. And you can go in either direction first, but I'm essentially going to create 3 strips that are kind of diagonal and slightly curved like upwards. So we don't want them like at a 45-degree angle like this, and we don't want them horizontal. We want them kind of somewhere like in betweenish. So like maybe something kind of like this. So that's kind of the idea. So I'm going to start on the left side here, and we're going to extend past it on the top and past it on the bottom. So past the apple filling on the top, past the apple filling on the bottom. So I'm going to start right about here and make like right to the, just a little ways from the left edge and make a slightly curved line. Hold it down, click the edit arc button to adjust it. We just want the slightest little curve in it. And again, we're like at a good angle like this, not like 45, not horizontal, but kind of in between. And again, we're extended both on the top side here and the bottom side. Now I'll just keep doing that, matching that same angle. So I'll extend a little bit on the top here, match that same angle-ish, slight curve. I held it down, adjust it if you need to. And the goal is to have 3, so I might make it a little bit closer together. But then we should have room for 1 more and then 1 more after that. So a slight gap, another curved line. If you ever get a line like this after you hold it down, just click the line button at the top and hopefully it gives you the arc button. If not, just redraw it a little curvier. But then yeah, we'll lessen it quite a bit there. But again, we're extended on both the top and bottom, matching that same angle, hold it down. Okay, 1 more, should be able to fit it. Leaving a little bit of the pie filling showing on the right side as well. So I think that looks pretty good for our 6 lines. So we have 1, 2, 3 that we'll fill in. Okay, so we're going to very messily connect them to start, and then we'll fix it once we do all of the overlapping. So I'm just going to simply connect them at the top and the bottom, our 3 different pieces here, like so. So they look kind of messy right now, but I promise there's a reason for it. Fill them all in. Boom. Layer menu. We're going to make a duplicate now for this one for the other side. So on our layer menu, slide to the left on this layer and hit duplicate. Grab the top one, click on it and turn on alpha lock. Let's set it to a different color so that we can see it a little bit better. Let's just do maybe this lighter color. 4th one on the second row. Back to our layer menu, click on this layer, click fill layer. Arrow tool, click flip horizontal. So now we're going the other way. So now we can see everything pretty good. Okay, so as you can see, they overlap weird kind of everywhere, so we're going to fix this all up. First things first, I just want to make sure that this one ends up covering all this pie filling here, so I'm going to go back to my layer, click on this layer, and turn alpha lock off, and just fix that if you need to. So if there's anywhere where you're seeing like the pie filling below it, just fill that in. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and get started on the basket text, like the basket weave, and then we'll fix everything at the end. So let's add another new layer on our layer menu, and this is going to be our guide. So we're going to grab, let's just grab like our green color, second one on the top row, same monoline brush, and we're going to decide who's overlapping where. So let's say we'll just pick any spot and pick a direction. So I'm going to say that on this one, it's overlapping this way. So that means that this darker one is going to end up on top. And then that means if this one's horizontal, or I'm going to call this horizontal through this piece, then this one's going to be like vertical. So this one means this one's going to stay on top. Okay, so then, and then we alternate like opposites, like almost like a checkerboard pattern. So since this one was horizontal through it, this one's going to be vertical with it. Then this one's going to be horizontal against it. Again, horizontal here, vertical here, horizontal here. So it should be like every other one when you go down. That is going to be our basket weave. Okay. Now on our layer, when you click the N on this layer with our green marks, and let's lower the opacity a bit so we can still see them, but maybe to 30%. Okay. Now we have our lighter layer on top. So like one of these has to stay on top, but we also want to be able to create shadows on it. So with this top layer, what we're going to do is just erase it anywhere that it overlaps with the one below it that it shouldn't. So click on our bottom darker line layer. Click on it and click select. Again, back to our lighter layer now with all the diagonals showing. We're on our lighter layer and we're going to do some erasing. So grab our eraser tool. And so this one is horizontal. So essentially it's going to stay with this darker color. That's what we want to see through it. So I'm going to go and erase this one. So anywhere essentially where the lines are like perpendicular with the lighter shape on top, if that makes sense. So it's like perpendicular. This one where it goes with it, we leave that one. This one's going to stay. No erasing. But this one is against it. We want to see our darker color through it. And that's why we also lowered the opacity of the green lines, because we got to erase everything right there. And I just want to be able to really see that we got all of this lighter color erased right up to the edge of our selection there. Okay, so again, this one is going with it. So that means we're going to keep this top layer. This one's going against it. So we're going to erase all of that. Okay. And then same thing, this one's going against it. We're going to erase all of that. And then that's it. So now we have like a nice basket weave. So if we undo our selection, you should see a good basket weave type pattern. So that looks great. And I know it looks weird right now because they're all different colors. We have these weird markings. It'll look better when we're all done. So that being said, let's now do another quick erasing. So for both of them, we need to erase where this pie crust layer is below them now on the bottom side here. So back to our wavy pie crust layer, click on it and click select. And then let's go to first our darker basket weave layer with our eraser tool and erase everything down here that's overlapping with that wavy line. Okay, beautiful. Now we'll leave the selection on and we'll just switch up to our lighter layer and do the same thing. Erase anything right there. It's overlapping with it. Okay, selection tool off. So now the bottom looks nice and clean. The overlapping looks nice and clean. Now it's just the top that looks really ugly. Okay, so let's just go to our bottom darker layer. Grab our eraser tool and let's clean up the tops of these that we can see. So for mine, they tend to be on top on the top here. So essentially we just want it to extend past the pie filling just a little bit. So I'm just going to erase it down to where it's just a little bit above the pie filling. And then just kind of round the corners of it a little bit so it looks like it's just kind of sitting right on top there. So it can extend a little bit, but nothing too crazy, if that makes sense. So I just kind of round it there so it looks like it's poking out just a smidge. Okay, so now it's the same thing for our next one. So just kind of right where this pie filling layer is, I'm just going to kind of cut a little closer to that, clean this all up, round the edges. And I know this like lighter layer's in our way still, so we'll get to that, but just kind of clean that up a little bit. And then same thing for this last one. Clean that up to where we're right above our pie filling layer, round it at the edges. Get rid of anything else. Okay, beautiful. Now we need to do the same thing with our lighter layer. So go back to our lighter layer. And if there's anything outside here that shouldn't be here, go ahead and get rid of that now. So it might not have overlapped all the way, but then it should still be gotten rid of, if that makes sense. We just want to see the top layer where it overlaps, or whichever one is overlapping. I'm going to erase all that. And then this one also looks a little weird. It like went a little above the pie crust, so I'm just going to kind of erase that down a little bit, and then this one's on top of it, so that looks good there. If you want to, you can just shut your green lines off for a minute and just make sure everything looks fairly clean. Oh, I missed this one on the outside. That one is sticking above everything, so we'll just clean it up and round the corners there. So now it should look something like this, nice and clean. You should have some overlapping, and that looks awesome. So I know that was very tedious. I apologize. I hope that you got yours to look the way you want it to, but it should just look kind of basket weavy like this. So I hope yours does. And it'll look even better when everything's like the right color. But obviously this just helps show our pattern a little bit more. And then obviously feel free to use your pen, go back in and use your pen tool if you need to for anything. That's totally fine. We are good to go there. Let's go back to our layer menu, and we'll keep our green lines available here. I'll keep them shut off though, but we will need those potentially when we go to shadow and highlight. I'm not for sure if we need them or not when we go and change these colors, but we'll see. So I'm leaving it there for now. Okay, let's see. Now we need to make the rest of our pie crust to connect it. So that's going to be back on our original oval layer here. Find that one that's like our pie color and grab our first color on the second row, same monoline brush, and we're just going to connect it now. So from this corner up to the edge of the pie crust here, I'll connect it there. Click this line button to adjust it. I held it down and then click the line button to adjust it if you need to. Same thing on the other side. So just like in a little bit from the edge of the pie crust on top. So it connects nicely on the bottom. It's in a little bit on the top. Now we need to connect this all to fill it in. So I'm just going to start on this edge, kind of make a line below all this stuff to the other side so we can fill it in. So now it should look something like this. Without all of our shadows in the right colors, it looks strange for now, but it will look great when we're through with that. So with that being said, we're just going to get started on all that. So on our layer menu, I'm just going to go back down to my bottom plate layer and we're going to work our way up. So on this bottom plate layer, just click on it and turn on alpha lock. So that was with this dark green color, fifth one on the top row. We have a slightly darker color next to it that we'll use and a lighter color as well. So this is where we're going to add some shadows, texture, and highlights. So again, let's grab our sixth color on the top row. And the brush that we're going to use for all of our texture is going to be the gouache brush under the painting category. My opacity for the brush is at 100 and my size, let's start at like 5%. And we're essentially going to create like a little shadow just right at the very top of our shape here that's sticking out under the rim of our plate. So I just start there, I work my way down in just a little bit. So we still see some of our base color. We don't want to cover the whole thing, but we want a little bit of a shadow there on that underneath the plate side. And then we want the teeniest little bit of a highlight on the edge as well. So I'm going to grab the third color on the top row and just do the teeniest little bit of a highlight on the very, very edge at the bottom where maybe the light would reach it. But we're doing really like wavy, messy shadows and highlights. Nothing too specific, nothing too smooth. Kind of roughing it up a little bit. So that's it for that layer. So we're essentially going to do that for each layer now. So our next one is like our rim layer. So we're going to click on that one and turn on alpha lock. So that was made with this third color on the second row, on the top row, which we're on right now. We're going to do a little bit of a shadow. So that's going to be with the second color on the top row. And we'll do that, and same brush, same size and everything. I'm just going to go maybe halfway through towards the bottom half to create like a little bit of a shadow and add some texture here on this lower edge of this piece, something like that. Then we'll grab the highlight color, fourth color on the top row, and do that right on the top edge. A little bit of a highlight there, add some good texture with it as well. Beautiful. So I kind of do one kind of good layer all the way across, and then I pick a few spots to really brighten it up by going over it again. Okay, layer menu. Next layer, click on it and turn on alpha lock. This is our main plate layer. So that was with the second color on the top row. Let's grab our lighter one, third one on the top row, and do a little bit of highlights around the edges. So I'm going to do the edge right on the left side here on the inner part next to my like darker oval there in the middle. Same thing on the right side, a smidge there. And then also like around the edge of the rim. Again, pretty messy. Then we'll do a quick shadow as well with the fifth color on the top row, just kind of through the middle area that we haven't touched yet. And this is just to kind of add some variation and some texture to it. So kind of just go through that like so. Next layer on our layer menu is the middle of our plate. Click on that layer and turn on alpha lock. We're just going to add a nice shadow to this with this darkest color. The sixth one on the top row, and we want to go right around the bottom of our pie. So that's why we waited until our pie was in place. And if you end up like covering pretty much the whole oval, that's okay, but we just wanted this to also kind of add some texture with it. So a little variation is good, but that looks good for that. Boom, already done with our plate layers. That was nice and easy. So next up is our pie layer, our main crust layer, but not the wavy top crust layer. So that is a good place to start. We're going to click on that one and turn on alpha lock. And let's see, we have a lot of colors for our pie crust. So our first color on the second row was our base color. We have two darker and then two lighter colors to work with here. So let's start with our second one in, our slightly darker one. And we're actually going to start by making a shadow around the wavy part because right now they blend together. So grab the second one on the second row, same brush, and I'm just going to start kind of right on the edge here and just very, very lightly start drawing until we kind of get this rim highlighted. So now we can kind of see where that is. So that helps kind of break that out. And then we do want a little shadow underneath it, so I might go under it again a little bit more, darken that up a little bit. Okay, then our other shadow, we're going to lower our size to maybe 3% to start, and we want to kind of make a shadow. Through the bottom, we're going to have some like crevices through it where our tin made some crevices. So I'm just going to start just like on the edge here, slightly angled, and we'll kind of start there. I start maybe a third of the way down, and then I just kind of go down and I branch out at the bottom so it gets a little wider there. I'll go down, and that was slightly angled up and to the right like the edge of my pie is. And then I'll go and I'll just kind of get like a little bit more straight up and down, working very, very lightly, spacing these out as evenly as I can. So now we have something like that to start, and then we'll kind of work off of that. So I'm just going to kind of go around that a little bit more to add some more texture very, very lightly. And then it'll kind of deepen it up in the middle a little bit again. So, I mean, this is the really fun part. This is adding all the fun texture and details. So this should be enjoyable. Okay, now we'll go on with our darker color, third one on the second row. We'll maybe drop our size a little bit to like 1 to 2%. And now we're going to go kind of right through these and really deepen them up. Again, getting a little wider at the bottom, but kind of right through the middle there. Maybe we'll do a little bit more kind of right underneath our pie crust at the top, here and there, maybe not the whole way through, but maybe just even like in the crevices where it curves up, maybe a little deeper shadow there. Something like that. Okay, back to our previous color, second one on the second row. I forgot to make a little shadow across the bottom, so I'm going to go back up to like 3% or so and just kind of go across the bottom through the middle, kind of curve through it there. So something kind of like this in between our little points. Okay. Again, messy, rough, that is all acceptable. Now let's go in with some highlight. So that's going to be our fourth color on the second row. And we'll kind of go through these middle areas that we haven't touched yet. And I'm kind of working like vertically in little like blobs. Get some good kind of highlighting and more texture going on. Something like this. Okay. Then our lightest color still, fifth one on the second row. And we'll just kind of touch a few spots with this really light color, just to kind of brighten things up a little bit more, just through the areas that we already went through in a few just kind of random spots. So it should look something like this now. Feel free to go back in with any of your other colors and add anything else. I might get a little deeper at the bottom here, very lightly, but I might just kind of use my darkest color towards the bottom again to really kind of deepen up those shadows way down there. Otherwise, I think that that looks pretty good. So however much of that you want to be doing, feel free to do so. Might deepen this shadow up underneath just a little bit more. Give it a little bit more dimension. Okay, next up is our rim, our pie crust rim, the wavy rim. So click on that layer and turn on alpha lock, and we're going to do all the same stuff that we just did somewhat. So let's start with our second color on the second row again, same brush. And I'm just going to create like a pretty light shadow just kind of in these crevices where it dips in like this. So just kind of on the undersides here. Pretty light again because I don't want to push too hard and have it like blend in with the shadow underneath it. So maybe just something like this. Maybe the same thing on the other side. So where it dips in again, shadow there. We're probably not going to do the super dark shadow on this one at all, because it's a little too dark. Okay, and then we will go through with the highlight colors too. So fourth color on the second row, and we'll kind of do like the little tips here where it curves up and down. So like the higher and lower points. We'll kind of go through there. Pretty rough, create some good texture, good highlights. Kind of just all through like wherever we didn't highlight or shadow. So kind of even through these middle pieces would be good. Okay, then we'll do like the really bright highlights on the very, very tops and bottoms. Couple really good highlights there. Maybe not that crazy, pretty light. We don't want like really, really bright white spots, but maybe something like that looks good for the wavy edge. And I think it looks extra weird right now because of the way these ribbons look, but I promise it will look normal in just a moment. So on our layer menu, next up is our apple filling layer. Click on that layer, turn on alpha lock, and we're going to do a very similar thing. So our apple filling color, base color was the sixth one on the second row. We have a darker and lighter is also. Let's grab our darker one, seventh one on the second row, and our same brush. And we're going to have shadows kind of all around the edges of our inner pieces here, and then lightly just like kind of through the middle, some texture as well. So nice and good on the edges, and then through the middle, some little sections. So again, kind of messy, fun, all that good stuff. Beautiful. Okay, and then we'll go through with our brighter color now, eighth one on the second row. Maybe we'll lower our size a little bit to like 2%. I'm just going to go through and kind of make some of these little sections as well. So this is kind of where it's like hot and kind of gooey. So just kind of some little sections of this throughout. So do a good amount of this. Feel free to go back in with your darker color if you need to at all. But that is our filling. Okay, and again, now it'll really come together. So next up, let's go ahead and, since we're just going to do one at a time, I don't think we need our green lines anymore. So our next layer up is our darker ribbon layer. So click on that layer and turn on alpha lock. And first we're going to recolor to our base color. So that's going to be our first color on the second row. Back to our layer menu, click on this layer and click fill layer. So now it's our normal pie color. And now we'll also do our shadows and highlights. So first of all, our shadows, let's do our second color on the second row. Same gouache brush, same maybe like smaller size, like 2%. And our shadow is going to be on like the inner side that we can see. So that's going to be like the left side of each one of these. So I'm just going to go through there and kind of create a shadow about going up just a smidge on that side. Darker on the like lowest side. So kind of a good little thick band right on the edge there for each one. Last one over here, same thing. Okay, beautiful. Now let's grab our third color on the second row and we'll just deepen that up right at the very, very bottom. A really good little shadow there. So I'm just poking it in just a smidge right on the bottom there for each one. Okay, and then let's go back to our other shadow color again, second one on the second row. And now we need some shadows next to the ribbon, the other ribbons that overlap them, but only on the side that we're going to have a shadow on them. So we're going to have a shadow on them on like the right bottom side. So I'm just going to go right here, a very light shadow right next to it there, light shadow next to it there, but not on the top side. So right there, because this is where we are looking at it from. Beautiful. That's it for the shadows. Let's go through the highlights now. So fourth color on the second row and kind of a similar thing. So then all the highlights are going to be on the opposite side. So I'm going to start there, maybe increase my brush to like 3%. And I'm going to add some highlight on just kind of like the side, the top sides here where the light's going to hit it till we get to our next ribbon. Leave a space there, maybe highlight right through here. Kind of just like add some texture throughout the whole kind of ribbon with this, but you know, making it brightest on that right top edge. Avoiding any of the shadows that we already created. So now it looks something like this, nice and beautiful and textured. Love it. Lastly, our brightest white color or brightest highlight color, fifth one on the second row. And we'll lower our brush size back down to like 2, maybe even 1. And we are going to have a super bright highlight right at the edge of our shadow. So this is kind of to show that like the shadow, that there's like an edge here, like a lip almost, you know, and then it kind of curves down into our shadow. if that makes sense. So it doesn't have to be super bright. You don't have to push like super hard, but we just want a good shadow or a good highlight right there for each one. So I guess don't make it like insanely bright, but boom, right along that side there. Each one. Beautiful. Okay, and then maybe just like a few more little places, add some brighter highlights. So maybe like right around here where we already added some other highlights, we can kind of go through and just make some more fun texture and variation. So something like that. And that is it for those ribbons. So those look amazing. Our other ones will look just like them and they will also look amazing. So let's move on to them. Layer menu, grab this next layer, turn on alpha lock, and first recolor to our base colors. So grab the first one on the second row, back to our layer menu, click on this layer, click fill layer. And now we do all the same stuff. So let's start with our shadow colors, second one on the second row, and our gouache brush maybe at 3%. And again, let's start with the like inner edges that are going to be in shadow. So that's going to be the right side of each of these. So a good thick shadow. And again, we want it thicker than the shadow that we made below it, but we'll add our darkest color still. So like this shadow right next to it, I don't want it blending in with that, but if it does right now, that's okay. We're going to deepen it up. But let's get a good shadow going there. Good shadow going here. And a good shadow going here. Okay, and then again, we want shadows next to our other ribbons with this color on the side where their shadow is. So like right here, I'm going to do a light shadow right next to it. Beautiful. Right here, a light shadow right next to it. A light shadow here. A light shadow here. Okay, make sure we got them all. That looks good. Okay, now our darkest color, third one on the second row. And again, we'll just poke this in right at the very bottom to really deepen up the shadow there. Just on the side, again, that's like the side shadow, not the shadow next to our other ribbon. Beautiful. Now our highlights. So then that'll kind of help like in these other areas where it's kind of like blending together, that'll help. So now our highlight color, fourth one on the second row to start. And again, we'll do just like the top edges, kind of some all over highlights in any area that we haven't shadowed. Brighten it up right on the edges there, add some kind of all over texture. Beautiful. Beautiful. Okay, now our really bright highlight on the edge next to our shadow. So that's going to be with our fifth color in the second row. Drop our brush size to maybe 2%. And again, right next to our shadow. Just a thin, bright highlight like so. And then in a few other spots too, I'll just kind of do that as I go. A few other pieces of the edge and stuff. Okay, next one, bright highlight right next to the shadow. And then in a few other places for some more variation. And then our last one right next to the shadow. And a few other places like so. And then look at that. That looks amazing for our pie. So I hope that you like the way that your pie turned out. We still have the few last things to add, a couple apples, a few leaves, and then some kind of like shadows and in the background and some steam. So we're not fully done yet, but we are done with our pie and we are done with our plate and they look amazing. So I am going to go to my layer menu. I'm not going to snap any layers together. You can, if you want, you can snap like all your plate layers together, but I am going to group them. So I'm going to grab my first plate layer, slide right on the other ones that make up my plate, and click group. I'm going to minimize that arrow there, so that's my plate. I'm going to do the same thing with my pie layers. I'm going to leave out my green line layer that I still have that's turned off, but I'm going to group the other ones together, and then I'm just going to delete the line layer. We don't need that anymore. But now we have our plate and we have our pie grouped together, and I'm actually going to move them now. So I'm going to grab them both. So I have one selected. I'll slide right on the other one, so now everything's selected. Grab it with my arrow tool. You can resize the whole thing if you need to. And then, but I like the size of mine. I'm just going to move it to the left just a little bit, like so. So it's a little off center. Plenty of room on the bottom for my apple, and then a few leaves. And then we're going to have an apple in the back right as well. So maybe about there. Okay, let's go ahead and make our first apple. So on our layer menu, let's go ahead and add a new layer to the very top. And we're going to make the apple shape, and then we'll duplicate it for the other apple, but then we'll shadow and texture them separately so they're not identical. So let's start with our shape. So let's grab our first color on the bottom row, grab our monoline brush under the calligraphy tab, and we'll just make our apple shape. So I'm going to start in the lower left corner here in front of my pie, and we'll make the first side here. So we'll make a good curved line like so. Hold it down. Okay, so it's, if you click edit ellipse, you can adjust it. I didn't connect it, but you know, it's like tilted out and to the right on the top, basically. Okay, we'll go to our layer menu, make a duplicate of this layer. So slide to the left and hit duplicate, arrow tool, click flip horizontal, and then I'll drag it over here, keeping it in line. So where we see these blue lines that line them up, and I'm just going to have it where they meet in the middle further apart, and then they meet in on the bottom like closer together. So that's how it should look now. Go ahead and go to our layer menu, snap those onto the same layer, and fill them in. And then I'm going to grab it with my arrow tool, and I'm actually going to click warp, and I'm going to adjust it a little bit. So the curved line's got a nice curved lines, but it's not quite perfect. I want the sides to be a little straighter, so I'm going to grab this bottom left middle like point where this square is and bring this in a little bit. Same thing on the other side, so that kind of straightens those sides out a little. Then I'm going to grab each corner in the top. So my top right corner, I'm going to bring down and to the right a little bit. Top left corner, down and to the left a little bit to kind of widen that and flatten that out a little bit. Maybe I'll bring this middle piece up just a smidge as well. So this is the shape that I have now. So do any more adjusting to that if you need to. Then you can switch it to uniform, and you can adjust the size if you want to, but I think this looks pretty good for my apple. Okay, and then while we're here, let's go ahead and make our stem as well. So on our layer menu, let's add a new layer. Let's grab our 7th color on the bottom row, the first of our brownish colors, same monoline brush. I think my size is 30. That might be too high. No, that looks pretty good. My size is still at 30. I'm going to start a little bit down right underneath this little crevice here, right about here. And I'm going to curve out and to the left, slight curve. Hold it down if you would like to. I'm going to go across the top there in like a straight line and then back down to the beginning. So it's like skinnier at the base, connects and stuff, and fill that in. Adjust that if you need to with your arrow tool. I might make it a little smaller. I might warp it a little bit in the middle, make it a little curvier. Something like that looks great. Okay, now we will make a duplicate of this. So on our layer menu, let's see, I'm going to group these together. So I'm going to select one side right on the other and hit group. Now my apple layer is in a group. I'm going to click on this new group layer at the top that has the whole group selected and slide left and click duplicate. Either one of them, I'm going to drag to the very bottom below my other groups. Make sure the whole thing's still selected. Grab it with my arrow tool on uniform. And then I'm going to drag it on back here. Maybe on uniform, I'll downsize the whole thing a little bit. And maybe I'll click flip horizontal just so the stem is pointing the other direction. But then, yeah, the bottom of it I can see kind of right behind my plate here. And then it's a little smaller, so it's not like going off the edge of the screen or anything. But then we can still kind of see it poking behind our pie, so that looks good. So we just wanted to duplicate the shapes, but now we'll do all the shadow, highlight, texture all separately. So let's go back up to our top apple layer in this group here and click on it and turn on alpha lock. And then for our apple, we have our base color. We have a slightly lighter, like pinkish color. We have a slightly lighter, like orangish hued color, then a really bright one for our shininess. And then we have 2 darker reds for our shadows. So I'm going to start with the first of the darker reds, the fifth one on the bottom row. Back to our gouache brush under the painting category, still at like 2 to 3%. And I'm going to start again on this front apple. And our darker colors are mainly going to be like towards the edges and then where it comes together. So I'm going to start on the bottom here, kind of like where it comes together, and just do a nice good shadow there, bring it up a little bit into my apple, and then kind of go around the edge a little bit, bringing it in quite a bit too so that we can get some good variety kind of going on, but really messy so we get some good texture on our apple. And then same thing on the other side. I'll go up the edge a little bit. Okay. Add some more kind of little sections of it just for variety. And then we also want it really dark by our stem, and we're going to kind of poke out in a couple directions. So starting at the base of my stem, I'm just going to kind of curve like this, maybe curve like this, like this, like this, and then up through the back as well, through those top edges a little bit. So, and then kind of just like deepen that up, mess it up a little bit so it's not so like perfect looking. But yeah, something kind of like that for the base of our stem. And it'll look better when we get all the other colors going on, but this is a good start there. Okay, so I left the top left more so alone, and this will be like where most of my highlights are, and then through the middle and stuff as well. But again, just kind of messy. Okay, color palette, let's grab our darkest red, sixth one on the bottom row, and we'll just deepen all this up a little bit. I might lower my size to like 2% and go right through the middle here and the edges again to deepen that up in the middle. Deepen it up right on the edge, deepen it up kind of through these other areas, mess it up a little bit more, deepen it up through the middle here by our stem and the edges there. Just kind of everywhere to get some good variety going. Maybe even just throw in some really skinny little kind of texture lines with this as well. Okay, now let's go through with our lighter colors. So let's start with our pinkish color, second one on the bottom row. Let's go back up to maybe 3%. And we'll just kind of add some highlights throughout. So pick a few sections that we didn't do a ton of shadows in and kind of add some highlights. Always kind of going in the direction of our apple. So curving a little bit, up here we'll kind of go like this a little bit, kind of rounding like you think our apple might. Okay, and if you overlap with some of your shadows, that's totally fine. Good for the variation and stuff. I might do some really light, just little pieces throughout as well, just for more kind of variety. Okay, then we'll grab our orangish lighter color, third one on the bottom row, and we'll just kind of pick a few sections that we highlighted and go through those again, and just kind of towards the center, so leaving the edges kind of more faded, but to brighten up certain sections of it, like so. And then we will go through with our really bright color, fourth one on the bottom row, and make some really, really bright sections right through some of these highlights. Just very, very small little sections, like so. Mainly just towards the top. Okay, so that is a good look for our apple. If you want to go through with any of your other colors again to just kind of mess things up a little bit more, I might go back in with my really dark, or my lighter of my darker ones, and just go very lightly throughout to just add some more texture. You can kind of go through your highlighted areas again or whatever, just kind of blend things out a little bit more. Whatever works. But otherwise that looks great. And now we're going to do the same thing to our stem. So stem layer, click on that one, turn on alpha lock. We have a shadow and a highlight color for them, 8th and 9th on the bottom row. So let's grab our 8th one, same brush. I'm going to go right through the base here, create a good shadow on the lower end. Then we'll grab our lighter color, 9th one on the bottom row, and do that through the tip of our stem at the very top. Give it a little highlight, more texture. And that is our apple. So now we'll do the same thing to the other one, but we just wanted to do them separately so that they weren't identical. So let's go ahead and go down to that group, click on that main apple layer and turn on alpha lock. And we'll do all the same stuff. I'm going to start with my lighter, darker color, the 5th one on the bottom row, and same brush. And we can only see part of it, so I'm not going to worry too much about that. If you want to, you can go ahead and go and turn off your pie layer. So let's go ahead and do that. Our whole pie group, we can just turn that whole thing off. Now we can see the whole apple, so we can recolor all of it. So let's just continue. But yeah, I'll do all the same kind of stuff right through the middle, all around the edges with this darker color, through by the stem, kind of poking out a little bit as well. Okay. Then a few other just little sections. I might just like pretend that the light's kind of coming from the same side, so we'll probably do like more highlights on the top left. And like a little bit more shadow on the bottom right side. So something kind of like that. To start, I'll go through very lightly with this as well for more texture. Okay, then our darkest color, 6th one on the bottom row. We'll lower our brush size a little bit. And same thing here. Through the stem area. Through the edges. Through our other darker pieces that we already have. And then also just like some light kind of texture lines that the apple has. Beautiful. Now our highlight colors. Let's start with our pinkish one, 2nd one on the bottom row. Back up to like 3%. And again, we'll make some little highlighty sections here on the apple, wherever you see fit. Then our peachy color, 3rd one on the bottom row, through the center of those, brighten those up some more. And then our bright white color, 4th one on the bottom row, to really add some really bright spots to the top pieces of those. And then we can even go through back in with like our pinky color or our creamy color and kind of add a few more just little chunks of this highlight color just to mess things up a little bit more. You know, back in with your base color, back in with any of your other colors. But this one's pretty far in the background, so it's not going to be as noticeable as our front one is. But that looks great. Layer menu, let's go to our stem layer, turn on alpha lock and our darker brown color, 8th one on the bottom row, and do the base of the stem, deepen that up. Then our lighter color, 9th one on the bottom row, and the top of the stem to brighten that up. And then that is it for that apple. So then on our layer menu, let's go ahead and turn our pie back on. And now we can see how that looks. That looks great. Okay, we need a few leaves under the plate now, so we'll do a similar thing. We'll make their shape, we'll add some highlights and shadows. So let's go ahead and just add that underneath our plate layer. So above our apple group down here, I'm going to minimize that group. I'm going to minimize the other apple group. We'll add it right above our bottom apple group underneath our plate. And we'll first just make the shapes of them. So let's grab our main leaf color, 9th one on the 2nd row, this orangey color. And then our highlight color is this last one on the bottom row, and then we have 2 darker colors right here as well. But again, 9th one on the 2nd row, back to our monoline brush under the calligraphy tab, and we'll just make some leaf shapes that are kind of like, look kind of flat. So they're kind of like horizontal. So I'm going to start maybe right under the plate here. And I'm just going to poke and poke and poke, and then kind of like this. So they're kind of like flattish. And then I connected it back to the beginning underneath it so I can fill it in. So kind of like that. Then maybe I'll have one kind of sticking out of the front, similar. So poke, 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 back to the beginning, fill it in. And then maybe one underneath the leaf here kind of sticking out. So just kind of whatever we can see of that. So maybe kind of at an angle like this, connect it, fill it in. Okay, so those all look good. This one looks kind of crazy. I'm going to grab my selection tool on freehand. I'm going to select around just this one since they're all on the same layer. grab it with my arrow tool, then I might rotate it, downsize it a little bit. Maybe something kind of more like this. My other one, I feel like this middle one could be a little bit bigger and a little bit more rotated as well. So maybe something kind of like that. So something kind of like that to finish those off. So then on my layer menu, I'll click on this layer and turn on alpha lock. And let's start with our darker color, last one on the second row. This top one on the second, this one right above it, the really dark one is going to be for our lines through it. So this is our shadow color. And our shadow is mainly going to be in the middle of them. So with that last color on the second row, back to our gouache brush under the painting category at like really low, like 2 or 3%. I'm going to go mainly like through the middle here, kind of like not touching the edges, and just kind of layer that a few times to get some good kind of variety through them, like so. Nothing too crazy. Same thing for the other ones. So we don't want these to be as crazy as our other pieces were, so just lightly through the middle here. Beautiful. Then we'll grab our lighter color, last one on the last row, and we'll go kind of around the edges of our leaves to kind of give those a little highlight. Bring some of that through, kind of messy. You can add some like through the middle to kind of give it some more variety. But yeah, mainly through the edges there. Okay. Then we'll have the line through the middle. So same layer, we'll just grab our last color on the top row and grab our dry ink brush under the inking category. I have my opacity for the brush at 100, my size at like 10, but do whatever works for you. And then through in the middle, I'm just going to come through and make some little veins. So something like that. Okay, and then that is it for the leaves. So lastly, we just need some shadows underneath. We'll add kind of a shadow around the whole picture, and we'll add some steam coming off of our pie. And then that will finish it off. So that'll really bring it all together. So that being said, let's go to our layer menu. We're going to add a new layer. We're going to drag it down to the very bottom of all of our layers, right above our background color layer. Click the N on this layer and set it to multiply here. Okay, on our color palette, we have these two gray colors on the top row, the 8th and 9th in line. So we're going to grab the 8th one first and back to our gouache brush. And this is our lighter shadow color, so it'll be kind of bigger. So I'm going to go maybe 5% on my size, and we're going to do underneath the plate, kind of around the leaves. Again, as we've been doing this whole time, kind of messy, kind of rough, but yet there. So then under my apple back here, kind of extending out to the edge of it. Under my apple here, again, kind of extending to the edge of it. We're kind of meeting up with this other shadow underneath my leaves a little bit more, underneath the edge of this plate, kind of like so. Then we'll grab our darker gray color 9th one on the top row, and we'll do more shadows underneath everything and just closer to everything. So closer to my plate there, closer to my apples, closer to some of my leaves. Nothing too crazy under the leaves, but still there nonetheless. And then under that back apple as well, don't forget that guy. Beautiful. Now we need a shadow underneath our plate, but on top of our leaves. So, leaf layer, add a layer right above it. Click on it and set it to a clipping mask, and click the N and again set it to multiply. Same really dark color here, same brush, and just any leaf that's underneath our apple or underneath our plate there, we're going to add a little extra shadow just right on top of our leaf. Like so. Okay, shadow around the whole thing. Layer menu. Let's add a new layer above our bottom multiply layer here. So we're just 2 above our background. Click the N and again set it to multiply. Same color, let's switch our brush now to our monoline brush to create a little gradient on the outside. So with our monoline brush, we're going to create a perfect circle in the middle. So create a circular shape, hold it down until it turns perfectly smooth, touch your finger on the screen to make it a perfect circle. Set it to any size as long as it's not going outside the edge or off the edge of our canvas. Grab it with your arrow tool, resize it on uniform if you need to, and then most importantly, we're going to center it on our 2 yellow lines. So it's centered both vertically and horizontally, like so. But make it as big or as small as you want. I'm probably going to extend it right about to the edge and then recenter it. Okay, we're going to fill in the outside. So drag and drop to fill that in. We're going to go to our wand icon, Gaussian blur, and we're going to drag this up quite a bit so we get a good blur here to maybe like 40 to 50%. Beautiful. I do maybe want like a little bit less of it, so I'm going to grab it with my arrow tool again on uniform and just bring the corners out just a little bit more and then recenter it if you would like to there, so we just get a little bit less on the edges. And then very lastly, some steam off of our pie. So layer menu, let's just add a layer to the very top of all of our layers. Grab our bright white color, 7th one on the top row, and our gouache brush for the last time at maybe 5% is good, and we will just do some steam coming off of our pie so we can go over our pie and kind of just create some little steam pieces, kind of like flame shapes, fill them in, maybe just some single little tendrils coming off of it, like so. So do as much or as little of that as you would like. And then once that's done, that is it for our drawing today. So I hope that you enjoyed it. I hope that you like the way that yours turned out. I hope that you maybe learned something new. So if you enjoyed this video, go ahead and give it a thumbs up so that YouTube shows it to more people. It really helps out my channel, so I really appreciate it. And if you haven't yet, go ahead and subscribe to my channel so that you don't miss out on any future tutorials. If you would like to share your drawing on Instagram, I would love to see it. So go ahead and post it there and then tag me so that I can check it out. And while you're there, go ahead and give me a follow so that you can see what I'm working on next. Thanks for watching.